Hi, it's Jonathan. I'm in our Fleetwood factory today. This is building 3. This is our studio space, and we occasionally do some demos here. People can't make it into New York. I want to talk about belt drive turntables. And I guess the message that I've been putting out about belt drive turntables, somebody's listening, because I get a lot of people coming in and saying, so what's the story with the whole belt drive turntable thing? And of course, since probably 99% of people have belt drive turntables, they want to know, like, what is it with Jonathan, and why doesn't he like belt drive turntables? And I think I've talked about it a little bit, but this is a belt drive turntable. Yeah, I own a belt drive turntable, and this is a really, really interesting belt drive turntable. I got this years ago from my dear friend Matt Ballman, who is an incredibly talented eye and antique sort of connoisseur, and has incredible taste in music, and even maybe better taste in the equipment for playing back music, and knows everything. And he was obsessed by this turntable, which, he showed me pictures of the thing, and I'm like, dude, this is something that somebody made in their garage who had a really great eye, because it's really cool looking, but I don't know why you're getting all excited. And he's like, no. This is super significant, historical, professional belt drive turntable from the 50s. And it turns out to be maybe even more significant than I'm letting on, because this exact turntable, and this is an original one, was made in 1953, I believe, by the Components Corporation. This model was called the Professional Turntable. And this, unless there's something that I've missed, this is the first significant belt drive turntable ever made, and definitely the first professional belt drive turntable ever made. So 1953 is the date that I'm seeing. There's no ad on this, there's no date on this ad. And I think this is a slightly later one, model. It is the professional, but the cowling over the motor unit is a little different. And I'll talk a little bit about what they're saying here, but what I want to refer to is this was made and sold for professional use. And even though to me it doesn't look like, the RCA decks or Fairchild of this period, but it was belt drive. And they were trying to do some stuff with the engineering of this that clearly there were issues that people were having in studio applications, radio stations, with noise, right, from idler drive or direct drive, RCA 70, a CD turntables, for example, or idler drives that they were hoping to deal with the belt. And it's very useful. This was here by accident, but it's very useful comparison. This is an extremely early phonograph, gramophone, from the turn of the century. I'm not quite sure, it's late 1800s or early 1900s. I could look up the model and wind up, right? So from the late 1800s until 1948, all records were 78 RPM, and they were mainly shellac, which broke easily. It was fragile. And you only got, really one song per side, because you only get 3 or 4 minutes, even on a 12-inch 78. That's what you had for music. There was radio too, but there were no other choices. The long play record was introduced by Columbia in 1948, and suddenly It was made on vinyl, so it was considered, you'll see, unbreakable on labels. And now you had 20, 25 minutes plus per side. This was a revolution. It opened up music playback in the home and in other applications to a much wider audience. And you could also have songs like Ellington's Masterpieces, an album I really love, that was released in 1950. And before that, Duke Ellington, if he was going to release something, it was going to be on 78, it had to be a fast number because it had to be over with, say, in 4 minutes. And with Masterpieces, with a new long play format, records could be 20 minutes per side, 25 minutes per side, and Duke Ellington could do like Mood Indigo, for example. So it opened up creative vistas for artists, and it made it possible for people to have a different experience of music in the home. The turntables had been 78, now they were long play, stereos not for another 10 years. So this company comes out with the Professional in 1953. Put this ad down. This is a completely original deck, and this one, we'll reference an ad for this in a console. 1953, this was like $275 in the console. That was an enormous amount of money. That was like a car. So what do we have here? It's interesting. This cowling, I love this. It's very lightweight wood. You see how it's made. Clearly, these were made one at a time. And the motor is a big, powerful motor on these shock absorbers, see, to keep vibration off of the plinth. And the belt, which we now take for granted since virtually all fancy audiophile turntables, except for a few direct drives, primarily made by Techniques, direct drive, they're all belt drive. And there's really no company that's making a true idler drive turntable today, at least that I'm familiar with. So this was the first serious belt drive turntable. I think that the first actual belt drive turntable was made by Philips in 1950, again to capitalize on this new, the Dutch were very, very creative and innovative, to capitalize on the new format of the LP, long play record. The key to this system, and it's so interesting because in 70 years, this is 70 years old, nothing has changed in how belt drive turntables, I'm going to argue, have been made from this. So you have a motor, and most belt drive turntables have very small, lightweight, usually DC motors, not powerful motors at all. The idea being that you don't want a motor that puts out a lot of power, a lot of vibration. You don't want that getting into the platter, even though the belt is supposed to be there to insulate the platter system from the motor noise, right? It's supposed to isolate. That's the idea. And that works to a degree. But what's so special about this is big motor, the platter weighs a ton. And when I say a ton, I mean, it's like a 25-pound cast precision machine steel platter. Let's see if I can get this out without making a big, it's very heavy, has a very long, very, very high quality shaft. Which was isolated with nylon bushings. They did a real good job with this thing. And since we're down here, you have these springs, and originally there was felt also inside of these springs. You can see they don't touch, the springs touch the bottom, but so there was felt and the springs. The felt, Matt told me, decayed, so we didn't replace the felt because I'm not really using this thing. And these were two of the ways in which noise was kept out of the system. And honestly, that's how people are doing that today. Cork mat, this is the original. It's dried out, it's not very good, but cork's a good mat material. And you had a spring-loaded spindle, a spring-loaded collet, which would expand in case the record hole was too big so it wouldn't flop around. Another really good idea. Today, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a belt drive turntable. It's not going to be any different from this. It's going to have a lossy belt. That's the point. The motor shaft is stepped so that you select the place where it goes on this different diameter shaft for the different speeds. I believe that's how it worked. And the heavy platter, which was revolutionary, was there to ensure the speed stability. And that's how I'm going to answer the question that people are asking me. So what's wrong with the belt drive turntables? Seems like a good idea, right? Here's the motor, it makes noise. Here's the platter. You don't want noise in the platter. So you don't want the motor here because it's very difficult to have the motor, either as part of the platter system or with an idler wheel. Noise gets in here. Seems like a really good idea. Yes, from that perspective, it is a really good idea. It enables you to engineer very simply a system that will work, be quiet, promise speed. So put a record on here, and this is the original Pickering tone arm. It's kind of a pretty cool arm. Of course, it was mono. So let's imagine that we're playing a Rubinstein Chopin or something, hits the piano really hard. So if you were looking with a microscope inside of the groove, right, you'd see a mountain where that transient occurs. In fact, you wouldn't see it like this because mono records had no vertical modulation in the groove. They were horizontal, but you would see a perturbation in the groove that would cause the stylus to work harder, and it would slow the system down. All right? I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Now, even though this is a big, heavy platter which is going to resist that movement, the speed will change. But there's no way, even if there was a sensor on this motor, for it to fix that slowing down, because you've already heard it. It can come back up to speed quickly. Maybe you don't notice it. But if you're really listening, you'll hear that difference. And that's the problem with belt drive turntables. That by the time any speed correction has occurred, your ear has already registered that problem. And since we're so used to it, we go like, yeah, so what? But it is a problem. It's something that is addressed with really good idler drive and direct drive turntable engineering. It is the reason why I'm not a fan of belt drive turntables, but I'm super happy that Matt, that I was able to get this turntable from Matt. Thank you. Never going to sell this. It's a true museum piece. I can't imagine how many more of these exist. And actually, I think it's probably a pretty good sounding turntable. Got plenty of turntables, so I'm not about to try it out anytime soon. But I love the way it was executed and the fact that, in 1953, something like this was $275 in the console. I'm not quite sure how much this version without the console would be, but, people were spending a lot of money to try and get the best sound out of records. And it's really interesting when you put this in relationship to what we have today. Belt drive turntables that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're really just taking the same approach, but trying to up the isolation or the quality of the motor, but it's the same basic turntable. So, hope that explains something about belt drive turntables, my prejudices, and the history of audio.